Hello again, everyone. Last time we saw how we can work with some looping mechanisms. We only saw a little bit of a glimpse of repetition, but we haven't been able to see the entire story for what Python is offering in terms of how you can loop and what sort of looping mechanisms and repetitions we can do. So let me refresh your memory first with what we did last time. We did an infinite looping using a while loop. So what I mean here, infinite, is well, let me fix this for while loop like that. So we can what we did last time, we had the user enter some answer, and then the answer was suppose that the answer is true, like that, and then we were asking here, as long as this answer is correct or true, in this case we were say welcoming the guests, welcoming the guest of the restaurant, say, just any example. So here we're basically saying we're gonna be welcoming the guest as long as this answer is true. We this is one way to check the equality here, but because the answer here is already known to be a Boolean flag, if I just remove this one here, this is going to be evaluated to a true or a false, and the condition will still hold correct in this case. So this is just a shortcut, but maybe for the sake of making sure that we see everything that we work with here, this could be like a better syntax, just for clarity. If I run this, then my program is going to keep running until I run out of memory, or I break the server if I don't run out of memory. So what I need to do here is to because there's nothing that controls this for loop. It will loop forever. If As long as the answer here is yes, this print statement is going to be control is going to continue to print forever. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask, and this is something that we saw last time. So I'm going to ask the user to input um, um, continue, like that. And here is I'm going to ask if you want to continue like this. So continue looping. So this is just a temporary variable here, because this is gonna give me a text. So if my answer here is yes, like that, then I'm going to set this flag here to true. Otherwise, and clearly here I need to have an if statement. If my answer is yes, then I should set this guy or this answer flag to true. Otherwise, which is an else statement here, I can basically say answer is false. And if I do it this way, that I will probably get an error, false, like that. So if I do it this way, I will get a welcome message because the first answer here is correct. And then I will hit this statement here, and this statement is going to be evaluated to yes or no, and if it's yes, is going to go here depending on what is it that I'm going to enter. So let me just do this. So definitely we got in the first print statement here. So it says welcome the guest. Well, clearly here that's not how we spell a guest. Do you want to continue? So if I say yes, like that, then it's going to welcome another guest. And if I say yes, yes, as you can see, as long as my answer is yes, I will continue looping forever. And if I say no, I will stop, because this condition evaluates to false. Therefore, this else statement becomes true. Therefore, the answer becomes false. So when I go here, so when I loop back here, because this is a loop, it keeps repeating, going back again to the while loop and repeating what's inside. So when I go back here, it hits, this condition is evaluated to false, and that's how we terminate. As you can see, I could run this one more time, and it's asking me if I want to continue. If I say yes this way, I still stop. Why? Because Python is case sensitive. The word yes here with an uppercase Y is not equal to the word yes as we entered it here with a lowercase. To be able to remedy this part, so we just have to say if you enter the word yes with an uppercase, or you enter it with a lowercase like that, then and this is equal, that's how we should do it. So if both of those, and then obviously we need to close the string. So if these two guys are, one of them is true, then this condition will be evaluated to true. And remember, this is an OR statement here that checks if one of these conditions is true, then this whole body of the if statement is going to be evaluated. Otherwise, the else statement will be evaluated. So either this or that will work. So to make this long explanation short, let me just run it one more time. So we basically evaluated to true because the first answer is true. And now if you want to continue, I'm going to say yes with an uppercase, and this is going to work. And then I'm going to say yes with a lowercase, and certainly is going to work. And now if I say no, then I terminate and I don't repeat anything else. So this is just how I can essentially loop forever and how I can control it. I think last time we probably ended up using some sort of a counter to control it, but here we don't really need to use a counter to control. Suppose now I want to loop with a counter. How do I do the same thing? How do I repeat something using a while loop with a counter? So while loop with a counter, like that. So now we need to define a counter, and this counter is going to start with a 0. Every computer scientist out there, you know, in the world, will always start their counters, or they start counting from 0. All the data structures that you're going to be working with, they always start at index 0. So you keep that in mind. Starting with 0 here is something very acceptable and expected also for programmers. So get used to this real quickly, please. Now we have to work with a while loop. If the counter here, as long as the counter is less than 10, I want to print this 10 times. So I'm just gonna say my current counter is, and then I can actually print the counter here, and this is going to print this statement here as many times as long as this condition is true. And right now, this condition will always be true because the counter is always 0. So if we want to change the counter like that, and we want to increment it so we can print this for only 10 times, then we have to use the plus equal operator that we used last time, which means we are going to increment the counter here by 1. So this is how you incrementing the counter by a value of 1. So now if I continue to increment that counter by 1, so now the counter is going to be, starts with a 0, starts with a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 until it hits 9, and then after that it will be incremented, and then when it's 10, this condition is not going to become true anymore, so it will terminate. Let's give this a try and see what it looks like. So I'm going to print. Obviously, I commented out all the previous code, and as you can see, we had 10 statements here from 0 to 9, and we were able to see this print statement here on the screen 10 times, and we also saw the value. And clearly here, 9 is less than 10, so that was the last time we ended up incrementing. So let me also show you another mechanism of how you can loop within a range using another mechanism. Is called a for loop. So looping with a range like that, and I'm gonna put this in a make it as a comment. Looping with a range using for each. Usually the for loop is actually pronounced for each, even though it's actually written as for. In some other languages, they write it for each like that, but in Python, it's essentially just for. So if we want to print an item 10 times, and that would be a range for a number, we want to print that number from a range which is in a range of say 10 digits, and this is a range, sorry, like that. Now if I say print this number here, and I'm gonna just put a really nice current number in range, put that number here like that, and I need to indent so it doesn't scream at me with this curly underlines. So this is going to print that number as long as it's in the range, and it does not need to increment. It does not need a counter that you need to increment. So here is doing all the work for you. So let me just show you how this is gonna execute first. It's doing exactly what we did. This is current number in range, and as you can see, it starts here with a 0. So it basically starts from in an ascending order. So now if you want to specify, if you really, and now it always also starts with the range 0, as I mentioned earlier. Suppose you want to start from a different range. You don't want to start from range from 0, you want to start from 5. For whatever reason, you have a database and you only want to print, you only want to process, say, transaction of 5,000 to 5,005. Those are the ones that you want to work with. So similar idea here. If you want to print or you want to iterate over number of items in a specific range that is bounded from say 5 to 10, like that, you print, this is not a comma, like that, and then here we print current number in range, oops, like that, and we basically have to print this so we see it for sure that it doesn't here is going to start from the beginning of the range and is going to end from the end of the range that you specify. So here it started from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and this is exactly the kind of expectation that we wanted. So if suppose I want to start from 49 to 59, like that, is going to print from 49 all the way to 58 because it is not inclusive. The last range, the upper range, is not inclusive. So let me write this down. Upper range is not inclusive, or is not, yeah, is not included, or not, or the printing is not inclusive. So it does include the beginning and it does exclude the end. So I think this is really good. You can now you've seen different looping mechanisms. Let me summarize that for you. You've seen an infinite loop here, where you basically ask the user to continue to do what they want until you tell them otherwise, or you can essentially work with an infinite loop, but you basically make it bounded by a counter. So that would be you have to do all the work for yourself. You have to use a counter here to change the counter within the for loop to be able to make this condition evaluate to true and then terminate, because if you don't put this, I cannot show you this because that will break It might break the website, the server on the website, or I will have to terminate. And either way, it's not a good thing to try. But you understand, if you fail to put that counter, this is going to be an infinite loop that will never stop unless you really force your web browser to terminate. The next thing is to actually loop within a range without having to do all the incrementing or decrementing. And here you basically specify the end of your range, and the beginning will be assumed. So the beginning here, begin range is assumed to be a 0. But if you don't want to start from a 0 range, then you specify your range here. You pass 2 parameters to the range here, and you have to separate them by a comma. So this comma here will separate them and make sure that this is a for loop, and it uses this colon here. So if we do this, this is going to be printed. Yes, this is going to be printed as many times as in the range. The first one will be included, and the second one will not be included. So we're going to go from 49 all the way to 58. That's it for today. I hope you found this useful, and we'll continue with the next lesson. Thanks again for watching.